Welcome to Sparks of Love. My name is Jerri Lynn Sparks, and today we have something really exciting. We have podcast invasion. So the podcasters over at Album Nerds have decided to invade Sparks of Love podcast. So welcome, Album Nerds.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have Don and Dude. So Don, you want to raise your hand so people know who's Don? There's Don in the light blue, it looks like. And then we have Dude in the Land's End shirt there.
Yes. It's either flannel or T-shirts for me all the time. So
spoken like a true rock god. Love it. I can see Jeff Buckley in the background. I love it. Yeah, one of the best.
Shameless promotion back here. Some of our episodes flashing up there.
Yeah, no, I actually have to say, so I love Album Nerds podcasts. I am a music aficionado. I thought I knew everything about music until I started listening to Album Nerds podcast. I know nothing about music. Like these guys.
That's how I felt when I joined the show. You know, I thought I knew a lot, but then, hanging out with Dude and Andy,
Well, that's part of it too, and that's what's great about podcasting is it's more than just telling what you know. It's learning. It's a subject you want to know about and love, and already know some stuff. But then, as we've gone, I've learned to love albums I never thought I would. I've explored genres that I used to, as a younger man, just roll my eyes at, and it's been a lot of fun. So anyone can be an album nerd. Just put in a little time.
Yeah, I love it. So a lot of times after my work week, I'll listen to an Album Nerds early Saturday morning. The lights off, we're in the house, and I just got these three guys' voices. So this Andy, Don, and Dude. Andy couldn't join us today. And it's funny. I laugh out loud sometimes. But the coolest thing about it is, this is a podcast about love. I have never known anybody who loves music more than you guys. Like, that is love of an art. Like, I'm really surprised at some of the albums that you review. There's no genre you guys won't touch. Like, it's all open. Like, everything is free to be. And so the reason I invited you guys is February is the month of love, typically. It's also Black History Month. So I'm hoping we can bring in a little bit of Black history to our albums that we discussed today, some of the songs we discussed today. But I wanted to try to, touch on love from all different areas. So far on the podcast, I've had a sociology professor. I've had a therapist. I've had a food business owner, because food is a form of showing love for people. Like every different way that you can think of with love. And a lot of the memories that I have in my life, love from my grandparents, it was around the piano. Growing up, my grandparents had a bluegrass band. It was very informal, but family reunions, they would back up a flatbed pickup truck and drop down the bed, and people would stand up there on it, facing the porch where we're all sitting, and play, their banjos and sing their yodeling. They did yodeling. And for me, music is the form of love, because as soon as I could, as an adult, I bought a piano to emulate what my grandparents' house was like. I brought that piano from Los Angeles, where I went to UCLA, all the way across country to Rochester, and I kept all musical instruments out so my kids would have that. And my daughter's now a musician, so it felt like a continuation of the way love came through me in my life. And now the next generation is doing that. So just to give people a background of what this episode is about, I asked the Album Nerds to come up with, the greatest love songs of all time, what albums represent love to them, and, we can take it from there. With that said, I wanted to ask, first of all, Album Nerds, what do you think is the best love song of all time?
Ooh. Well, I can start. I'm not sure it's the greatest love song of all time, but it's become my favorite. But it's more about, I think it's more of like a heartbreak song, I think. But He Stopped Loving Her Today by George Jones. It was written by Bobby Braddock and Curly Putman. I ended up reviewing that George Jones album for the show, and I remember I was working out at the gym, listening to it, because that's often where I get a lot of my homework in, is listening during working out or something. And so as I'm, on one of these exercise machines, I'm hearing the song, and it really has a huge climax. And I was starting to get like choked up, as I'm pumping iron. But for people who don't know, it starts out, he said, I'll love you till I die. And so basically the song goes on, and then the refrain is, he stopped loving her today, and the reason he stopped loving her is because he died. So that idea of really loving somebody till death, I think, is really cool and romantic.
Yeah,
I
we're
remember
preparing
being
for
afraid
the-
of that. Didn't you remember being afraid of that song, dude, when you were a kid? Like, for me, it was like, they die? These grown-ups around me die?
I mean, I had heard it maybe on Hee Haw or something, and I just thought that that's a 70s show. Most people may not remember. We did a whole
remember
episode
Hee Haw.
about Hee Haw, but I always just thought it was like
Is this the part where I tell you that my senior class, I was nominated to be the feature hostess of Hee Haw? That was what
nice.
my
Wow.
senior
That was an
superlative
honor.
was.
But I always just assumed it was about leaving something or breaking up. But then in preparing for that particular episode, I hadn't really dug into that album, and it was like a gut shot when you realize. And also, you're kind of, especially with George Jones and his reputation, kind of proud of him for, he didn't write it, but for sticking through with somebody and till death do us part. So that's a tough one. It's a
Well, I
good
remember
one, though.
the line, too. They placed a wreath upon her door. That's how you knew that he had died.
Yep.
That's the part where, as a kid, I was like, I also cried, Don. I was just like, oh my gosh, like that. It was just really very sad. But that is a form of love for you doing the full circle, right? You're like, literally, till death do us part. He actually honored that in the song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what about you, dude? What's your best love song of all time?
Well, I guess I would go with John Lennon's Love from it's track 7 on John Lennon Plastic Ono Band. And it's just because it's so simple and stripped down. A lot of times love songs and descriptions of love are very full of strings and a lot of to do. And this is just talking about love is real.
Yeah.
Real is love. And my favorite line is love is wanting to be loved. That's what makes love exist, is the desire to be loved. And it's one of those where there's nothing else but his voice and a little piano to really think about what love is. And I like that. I just like the simplicity,
I want to know more about that. So it resonated with you because it's wanting to be loved. How does wanting to be loved make you more able to receive love?
Well, I think especially as you get wiser and experience relationships, the wanting to be loved at first, I think, is more about the ego, the attention, the not being alone.
Yeah.
And then eventually the wanting is a quality, a certain quality of love, being loved for who you are, not having to, do stuff you don't have to do things that you don't want to do or be someone you're not, which I think as we're younger, we're more apt to put on a mask to fit into a relationship so we can date somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
there's also maybe a distinction between needing to be loved and wanting to be loved. And so I think if you're, I think it's healthier if you want love, but you're still happy on your own and you can make it work by yourself. But sometimes needing to be loved is not a healthy thing.
Yeah. Need is a difficult word, right? Need it's about I. Need is I. Want is sort of about I, but I think want implies self-improvement. You think about George Clooney. Let's use George Clooney as example. He was known as like the Hollywood, get about town, date all the girls. And Warren Beatty did the same thing. Cary Grant did the same thing. All three of these guys have a couple of things in common. They literally dated all of Hollywood, and then they say, the story goes, oh, but then they met the one. They also were older. They'd sown their wild oats. They had finally probably encountered like a Madonna, or I forget who George Clooney was dating, the wrestler, right before he found Amal. I think it's a combination of what Dude said about that learning, that self-improvement, and you're wiser. So it's not so much that the person is just settling for whoever happened to take them at that age that they got. They actually had been sculpted by all those relationships. And so they moved from need when they were out there like gallivanting and dating everyone, and realizing that they want love, and that's where the self-improvement comes in. They don't want to keep making that same mistake over and over. But you don't see a lot of that. Nothing comes to mind in love songs about that. Maybe there's something there where the person finally gets it. I don't know if there's any example of that. I kind of threw you a curve there.
No, I mean, I picture
someone,
like a Hank Williams or something.
Yeah.
Maybe one of those songs. I mean, because he was always out there and drinking and getting around. I think, but. I'm trying to think if there's one particular one where he kind of, ends up, being fixated on one particular person.
Yeah, there's probably, I'm going to have to make homework for that. And then I was also wondering, is there an album in any genre that is all about love? Is there, maybe from the 50s, the Motown sound? I'm trying to think of Diana Ross. I just watched that great Netflix documentary, The Greatest Night in Pop, about the making of We Are the World. Holy cow, like what a great episode. But I can't think if any of those artists had an album just about love, like the theme was love.
We're actually, this month, we're recording a series of episodes about love and romance in different forms. And we use a wheel where we have topics on it we spin. So we're choosing, we put some stuff on the wheel, and that's one of them is albums that are about love, or about seduction and that part of love. And it's tough because, yes, you can find albums that are full of maybe love songs, but there's usually breakup songs mixed in there. There's usually something random thrown in. So it's tough to find one that's like thoroughly themed about the layers in a relationship, and I'm sure they're out there. So, but we're struggling to find that as well.
Yeah.
Well, we did record one recently where we did the Marvin Gaye "Let's Get It On."
Oh, love that.
I feel like maybe, all of the songs, dealt with love in some form, and it's actually far more romantic, I think, than the title lets on.
Yeah. The topic of the show was sensual serenades, so it was supposed to be getting to, more intimacy. But that album, Let's Get It On, as we discussed on the show, definitely there's layers. There's songs about his divorce. There's songs about loneliness, but it's all packaged in a really heartfelt and of course smooth way, as Marvin is want to do.
I loved him. I actually think he's undervalued. Like, I remember when I first heard Marvin Gaye, I was at my grandma Sparks' house, and it came on the radio, and like, holy cow, like, what is that? And I also remember when that song Sexual Healing came out, and I felt like, ooh, this is something I have to listen in private. Like, I should not listen to this around my folks. Like, I knew even at a young age, like, this was sexy. This was very, very sensual. And I couldn't believe that he was allowed to sing about that. But his voice is incredible. And I just feel like maybe we shouldn't discount heartbreak as part of not falling into the love, because heartbreak is a part of love. It's sometimes the outcome of love gone wrong, or when it's one-sided, where you're the person that loves and the other person didn't. But I just recently took my my middle child to see Aerosmith live. We drove down to Pittsburgh and saw them on their second show, and then they actually had his voice go out. So we were lucky that we got it in. And the way he sings about love is great, but it's also the love that the band members have for each other. They just know each other, like the shorthand of each other, the way they were walking around stage, just cueing off of each other. And I remember sitting in the audience going, this is almost like a model for love. You know the movements of the other person. It doesn't even have to be romantic love. You know the movements of the other person so well. You're like maybe offering a hand to help them up the stage. And one of the side crew knew that Stephen was struggling, and that she quickly handed him a bottle of water. Like, she just was cued in on him. And I think in that performance, it was just, he was struggling with his voice, but he loved his audience so much. He gave it all to us. And then the next day they announced that he's going to have to, take some time off to let his voice recover. But for love albums, for me, the one I was thinking of, you're going to laugh so hard. Do you remember Bonnie Tyler?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Bonnie, Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wore I had a vinyl record player as a little girl, and the little album. I forgot what are they called? Not LPs. It's the smaller
45.
ones.
The 45.
45.
Yeah.
I wore that 45 out, and she had "It's a Heartache." And I was dating a boy, my first boy who ever kissed me, Jeffrey Richard Michael Harris. If you're out there, you broke my heart. Yeah, he broke my heart. And we went to church together, and our parents were best friends. And so after church on Wednesday nights, they would come over to play cards at whoever's house. And this particular week, after Jeff and I had just broken up, I caught him kissing, and I was upset. And so I broke up with him. And the parents brought us all over to our house for cards, and Jeff and I were forced to be in the same house with each other. And I was mad. I was hot. I was really mad. And so I went to my room, slammed the door, and I played that 45, "It's a Heartache," over and over all night long. Well, at one point, and Jeff was 3 years older than me, so I was 12, he was 15. Or maybe 11 and 14. And he comes marching down the hall, bursts into my room, grabs the 45 and breaks it over his knee.
Oh, jeez.
I was livid. So then I went into my mom's kitchen and I got tape, and I taped that Dabbling record back together, and I played it, and I'll still remember to this day, the song goes, "It's up, it's up." And I just kept playing it over and over. So it's kind of like my music heartbreak song. But to this day, I can't hear that song without thinking of Jeff breaking my music over his knee.
Well, Jeff, if you're out there, you owe Jerri a 45.
Oh my gosh. But my whole point with that story is we can't discount heartbreak in our love albums. So I think if you haven't finished recording all your albums, maybe that could be a subcategory, like some breakup songs like Alanis Morissette, "I want you to
Yep.
know." Oh, what a great, great song. And actually a boyfriend that I was, broken up with called me after that song came out, and he's like, "Oh my God, that song is like you wrote it for me." I'm like, "Yeah. Remember that, dude." So my next question is, so which song do you think is the best about heartbreak, about lost love? Like if you had like an anger anthem like the Alanis Morissette, or like Suffering, like that song Suffering by Satchel. It's in the movie Beautiful Girls, one of my favorite songs of all time. I think Don can really relate to me on this, just like the yearning and the sadness, like the feel. Whenever I watch that particular song, Suffering by Satchel on YouTube, it gets me right in the feels. And it is love-based, right? The movie itself is a great movie, with a great cast. Uma Thurman, and I forget some of the other guys. Matt Dillon is in it. Yeah, it's a great movie. Music is incredibly important in that soundtrack. But for me, my answer for the best heartbreak song is Suffering, because it says, "Until you know the meaning of trust." That line, "Until you know the meaning of trust," and the way he aches it out. He aches that song out. That's my favorite breakup song. So what about you guys?
Well, I think, my first love was really, kind of that new wave and post-punk movement of the 80s. So, I'm a huge fan of artists like The Cure and Depeche Mode and the Smiths.
It's all heartache.
Yeah, it really is. So it's really hard, like of your entire collection, what's the best song? But I mean, album wise, and I suspect it's probably going to be an album that comes up, this month when we're talking about heartbreak. The Cure's Disintegration. I feel like that's their masterpiece. But almost the entire album is dealing with heartbreak and loss. But if I had to choose a particular song on it, maybe Pictures of You. It's probably like the most obvious one.
Yeah, Pictures of You is a great one.
It's probably, something people could relate to, just staring at pictures of the person that you're, that you're losing. But, even though it's The Cure, and it was modern for the time, definitely like a classic, approach to songwriting there.
Do they have, is that the album that has Friday I'm in Love?
No, the next one, Wish, has Friday I'm in Love.
Yeah. And
This
what
one
about
has
ahead.
Love Song.
love song? Okay. And what about that creepy song? I remember there was a creepy song called Spider-Man is Having Me for Dinner Tonight. That one always scared me.
That song's called Lullaby. That actually is on Disintegration.
Is it?
That's one of the few tracks that maybe doesn't deal with love.
Well, it depends on the kind of love. Yeah. What kind of relationship you got going on there, Don? Oh my God. What about you, dude?
I haven't really experienced use music for breakups in terms of something personal
lucky
to
you.
me. I mean, I've when I had relationships and when I was younger, it was more about anger music and not breakup per se. But if to think about it, I like Fleetwood Mac's "Go Your Own Way"
Yeah.
because that's about a breakup, and then the album Rumors is just so full of songs about these relationships between the members of the band and all the strife going on, which is what drives the album, but also that song where the people who broke up with each other are singing it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean,
Ooh.
that's commitment to your art, and it's a great record too.
Yeah. Is that the album that also has Silver Spring?
That was a B-side, I think, from that same
Christine
period.
McVie
So if you
sings
get
it,
if you
right?
get the deluxe edition of that album, it's got Silver Springs.
Yeah. I can't listen to Silver Spring without crying. There's so much pain in her voice that she conveys there. But I love the idea that dude said about commitment to your art. Like that's also a form of service, to go back to previous definitions we've heard from other guests about what love is. And my mom said it was a deep feeling, but my dad said it's wanting to make others happy, to be of service to others. That is really commitment to your art, for sure. Yeah.
And that's often the difference between a good love song and a trite love song, because it's about the sincerity of it, and you can tell, when it's really coming from a sincere place, and when it's just, hey, I'm going to write a catchy love song.
Well, one of the things I think music serves for me, and I bet it's probably true of the two of you, sometimes you just don't want to talk. I remember one time, this guy I was deeply in love with, and we broke up multiple times. This particular time we had broken up, and he called me after, I don't know, a long time had been, with the two of us apart. And I was pissed. I was really angry at him. I was very hurt. And I remember he said something like, "Can I come over?" And I just didn't want to talk. As soon as he walked in the door, I had the song queued. It was by Sigur Rós. I think they're an Icelandic band. And I think it's something about a boat. I don't know what the words are. It wasn't important. That song captured my heartbroken feeling, and I felt like a boat at sea, kind of listlessly floating. And I remember I had it all time. The moment he walked in the door, I hit play. And we silently walked towards each other, and I had hurt in my eyes, he had hurt in his eyes, and we just slow danced in my mudroom. And that was all. That's all it took. That song took the place of words. Somehow by the end of that song, we were back together. It was just the strange power of music.
That reminds me, so another one from the new wave realm, Depeche Mode, the song "Enjoy the Silence," where it's, all I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary. They can only do harm.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that same idea, where, it's not about talking. It's just about, being there in the moment.
Yeah, and even
and
there's
the
a
words
song.
are just going to screw things up.
Yes. Do you remember that song "All by Myself"? And there's a scene in the show Friends where I think it's Joey or Chandler sitting by that fake rain wall.
Yeah.
And they have "All by Myself,"
Yeah.
and then the
'cause
monkey
Joey-
comes in.
Joey had his own apartment, and
Oh, that's right.
him and Chandler were apart, and they were
Yes.
both looking at the rain.
Yeah.
I just watched that a couple weeks ago, actually, so it's fresh in my mind.
Yeah, whenever I'm sad, I want to listen to music by myself in a room. I don't want to see people. I don't want to talk to people. And I want to find that right music. And you can even in the movie Jerry Maguire, one of my favorite movies, Tom Cruise is in this film, and he's finally gotten a deal with the football player, he thinks, and he's driving back. He's lost everything. He's lost his job. He got fired by a guy he thought it was his friend, and he's in the car driving back, I think, from Texas to California, and he's like just channel surfing until he gets to that Tom Petty song, Free Falling, which I can't hit the notes on that one. Don, you'll have to help me out with Free Falling.
Free!
That's right.
Free
And that's what he does.
fall.
And that's what Tom Cruise does in the film, because he was in a movie, Magnolia, where he sang. Actually, they had a montage, and he's a pretty good singer, actually. But that character, like trying to find that mood that fits your broken heart, that's, to me, music does help forward love or help you process heartbreak. I don't know what part of the brain that is. I haven't taken it to that neurological level. But for me, part of the reason why music, and like I go to concerts all the time, is I want to feel that connection to everybody in the audience. It's different than watching it at home. Like when I'm at CMAC, in Canandaigua, and you see like everybody when they're doing the music between shows, they'll have like the DJ come on stage and play music while you're waiting. I'll be at like, the Keith Urban show. I wore my Keith Urban t-shirt today, guys, because he's the best concert I've ever seen. They did House of Pain's Jump Around. And here you got these country guys with their boots and their hats jumping around. Like the whole crowd's like together, that vibe that you feel. I'm like, wow, thousands of people like the same stuff I like. That's like love in a big cultural way. And that's what music serves for me, I think. I don't know if you guys feel that way or not, if that's what you feel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's part of why we do what we do. I mean, it's three friends talking about music because I want to talk about music with my buddies, and we might as well record it and share it with other people and hope that they get involved in the conversation too, which is, I love that community feel of concerts, but mostly just like, going to a record store and talking to the owner and then the regular customers that come around. I mean, these are all people that are passionate about the same thing. And it might have different tastes and be from different backgrounds, but it still brings you together. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, whenever I'm at a party or something where I don't know people, and I'm a bit shy when I first meet people, but usually the topics I can talk to people about are music and sports. So if somebody isn't a music fan and they're not a sports fan, then I'm just in trouble.
Yeah, well, this is where I think I'm an unusual girl, and I don't mean to stereotype, but those are two of my favorite things. I love music and I love sports. I was at the Buffalo Bills game for the last game of the season with Taylor Swift there. Talk about blending of worlds, sports and music, like right there. And my son is the same way. I can nerd out on music, and my friends are like, what are you talking about? Like I really do like that. And Dude, you just reminded me of this wonderful scene. I can't remember the name of the movie, but John Cusack is going through all the loves in his life to see where he messed up. And he goes to a record store, and they start to play Dry the Rain by the Beta Band. And
High
Fidelity. Love that movie. But remember that scene? So it's got Lisa Bonet and
Jack Black.
There's Black History Month. So Lisa Bonet, she's a beautiful lady, and of course Lenny Kravitz, her ex.
Jack Black is in it too. That's what I said.
Yeah. And I think Catherine Zeta-Jones is in it. It's an interesting film. But the guy who's behind the counter, he goes, watch this. And he starts playing Dry the Rain by the Beta Club. And all of a sudden, people start moving. And there's a silence thing happening with the people in the record store. And he's trying to make people buy albums. But when I go to Record Archive in Rochester, I know they do that. As soon as it gets like kind of still, they'll play a song. And it works every time. I buy the album they're playing every time. Like, it's brilliant. They know how to do that.
When I go to bars, you probably know, like the jukeboxes, I think they call it touch tunes. So you can just be playing songs from your phone. And so any bar I go into that has it, I just immediately take over the soundtrack to the evening.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Touch tones.
Of course, it costs a lot of money. By the end of the night, I've spent more on songs than drinks. But anytime I play Run DMC, it's tricky. It just changes the whole atmosphere. I mean, like just people start moving. It's so amazing how a song like that can...
It's fun to run to fun to around. It's tricky. That song?
Yep, that's it.
Oh, okay. I love that. I love it. I didn't know that was a thing. You're going to have to tell me about that app. And then this is getting a little intimate here. Hope it's okay. But what is your lovemaking playlist? Like, do guys still have that? Like, as your teenagers, you got to have your playlist, right? Like, you have your makeout playlist. You're in the car with the girl. You know, you're hoping, you know, some wonderful song from like, you know, Bob Seger comes on or whatever. Like, do you have lovemaking playlists, guys?
Well, I figured Don probably just sings his lovemaking playlist.
Oh, sure.
To his poor wife. No, I don't really. I think it's just. I mean, when you're younger, yes, you plan out stuff and try and pick things that you think the person you're with will respond to in that way. Even if it's meaningless to you, it's more of a manipulation. But yeah, I mean, you know, with my wife, it's really more about just stuff that we enjoy together musically and just not disruptive, like not loud. So something, you know, like off the top of my head, just, you know, like a Beatles record or Marvin Gaye or just anything that's just in that nice familiar territory, not necessarily specific songs.
So no System of a Down on your love.
No, exactly, right? Yeah, you want to avoid any new metal, probably. That's
no Twisted Sister.
Quite misogynistic. For so.
What about you, Don?
Yeah, I think I would tend to probably just play music that the other person likes. That's going to make them you know, comfortable and yeah, you know, I'm a pleaser, I guess. You know, so I want to. So it's about them, you know.
Yeah, well, I like vinyl records, but it's, you know, there's only so much length, so it depends on what kind of night you want to have there, right? You can't do I don't have the turntable situation set up, but I don't think it's so much the genre for me as long as it's got enough, like, swaying, you know, I like that kind of. But I remember, to bring back the movie Jerry Maguire, how important your lovemaking playlist is. So Tom Cruise's character is trying to woo Renee Zellweger, and her au pair, I guess it is this guy, kind of reminds me of Jack Black, but I don't think it was him, gives him a playlist. And he's like, Jerry, this is gold, trust me. And he doesn't even want to give it to him, and he has to like jerk the cassette player from his hand. And so Tom plays it thinking this is going to like woo Renee Zellweger, and it's like experimental jazz. And at one point, they're making love in the film, and they just both stop and start laughing. Like, what is this stuff, you know? But I kind of loved it because it showed that they can be real with each other. Like, they could both acknowledge. And that's when I knew they were meant for each other. Those two characters were meant for each other when the music and the lovemaking didn't make sense to either of them. You know, it made me think that the kind of music you like really is a good, I don't want to say litmus test, but it's a good, you know, way of looking at if you're going to be compatible. Like, if you're total metalhead and your partner hates it, are you going to be able to do it? Is music commonality your love language? Could that be an indicator of whether or not your love's going to make it or not? I don't know.
I mean, to me, it's more about loving music. So when I was younger, I was much more, that's garbage. My stuff is perfect. If you don't like it, you're dumb. And as I've gotten older and learned to, when I was younger, I listened to everything. And then in teenage years in college, I got all closed off. So I think it's more important, you know, my wife loves music. We don't love all the same stuff. We like a lot of the same stuff. But, you know, she might like Metallica, but maybe doesn't want to hear it for an hour at a time. And I totally understand that. And same with something that she might like that's more poppy or whatever. And I think it's just appreciating the person's love for it, trying to understand it, and then just the joy that they get from it should be enough. And that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You know, if somebody, like, I don't think I could be with somebody that didn't care about music at all.
Right.
But, you know, when you have kids, you know, I'm just happy that they have passion for music, even if it's not something, you know, I would, you know, particularly care for.
Yeah. Well, that's why you try and get in early and introduce them to your stuff, right? I mean, that's how I grew up on the Beatles and the Doors and the Stones and things. And that has definitely shaped my taste, but also just my my I guess the foundation of everything after that I got into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think openness to different genres also shows you're probably open to other things. And I grew up in the South with, Hank Williams Jr. It was like every boy in high school wore the black Hank Williams T-shirt. That was the look if you wanted to be a badass in high school. And because I'm from the Blue Ridge Mountains, or the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I was a rocker. I didn't go with the country set. I found that country back then, at that time in my life, just to be tedious and whiny and twangy and repetitive, where I was into more like the stuff Don was in, like A Flock of Seagulls. I was really in, don't judge me. Duran Duran, which I actually, with my high school, one of my high school best friends went to see Duran Duran at CMAC this past summer, and it was like awesome. And Madonna, loved Madonna. So I was into that kind of, David Byrne, Talking Heads, all that, The Cure. And then my ex-husband, he was, more into like Yes. He really loved the band Yes, just crazy about them. And I remember trying to play him old Rolling Stones blues, like their blues era, the Muscle Shoals and all that stuff. And he just didn't get it. And the problem was he just wouldn't try to be open-minded to it. And I would later on become more into country music, and he just thought that was the worst thing ever. So there was a mindset difference, I think, more than a genre difference. And then when my son with autism, who has perfect pitch, by the way, he has perfect pitch, he loves Taylor Swift, he got into country music after I had raised my kids to be headbangers. Like when they were little toddlers, we were driving to preschool one day, and all four of them in the mirror, I turned, instead of Barney, I turned on some headbanging music. And I remember looking in the rearview mirror and seeing four little heads going, yeah, like that. And I'm like, nice. My work here is done. Like I've done my parenting. But I thought that they would all stay in that genre. And they didn't. Like all four of my kids went their own way, but we grew up with, like, if they were having a fight, I would crank up Mary J. Blige's Family Affair, and that stops everybody from fighting. Ooh. It's the world peace answer, really, is just send some Mary J. Blige to the Middle East. But Jared got into country somehow, and he forced me to go to a country concert. And I'm telling you, I was dreading it. I did not want to go. By the end of the night, I was converted. I loved it. And now I went to see Keith Urban, of course, and Luke Combs. What a showman. My God, what a great show. And and Chris Stapleton, holy cow. Like that being openness to different genres. But even Chris Stapleton is a country artist. He listens to Metallica. Like he's a metalhead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he actually got me. So I liked Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson and stuff like that, because that was okay to like even as a rock fan. But I largely rejected country music, and then like 10 years ago or so, hearing him on the radio, I was like, hey, there's still like outlaw dudes. So I got into him, and then it just let me open myself up to the genre. And I tend to lean toward the more independent artists, but guitar and a sad voice with a little twang, that's perfect.
Yeah. Do you know Grace Potter?
Mm-mm.
No.
She's amazing. I went to see her with Jared this summer down at Point of the Bluff Vineyards on Cuca Lake. She's kind of a crossover between country, like modern country, and rock. Just a phenomenon, just amazing. And she does a lot of crossover stuff. During her set, she'll do rock, but then she'll turn around and do a country banger. But the one artist that I really want to see, and I haven't gotten to yet, is Tyler Childers. Like, I love the authenticity of his voice, but talk about heartbreak songs. Oh, he's definitely got some good ones. And then he has a song called I'm All Yourn. And they play him on Sirius on like your coffee house station. You would not expect to hear an artist of his genre on there, but he's got that crossover. But his love songs just, they come at you unexpectedly. You think it's just a typical country song, but his voice is just fantastic. And, and sticking with the theme of Black History Month, the biggest hit that Luke Combs has going right now is a remake of Tracy Chapman's Fast Car.
Right.
Yep. So I love the idea that it can cross genres. But I did want to ask one other thing. When you are, let's say, driving down the road, what is your go-to song? Like if you're, just wanting some time alone, like do you have an artist that you tend to go to?
Well, we're album nerds, so we choose albums to listen to.
Yeah.
I've really, I've branched out over the years, just like Dude has. So, I can appreciate most genres, but I guess when I'm alone and I just want something that's for me, I'll still go back to, the Cure and Depeche Mode. So, that album I mentioned, Disintegration, is that's probably the record I've listened to most in my life.
Yeah, listening to albums for our podcast as well has sort of filled my ears with, I always have something I need to listen to. So it's in those moments, like say we take a couple of weeks off and I can't think of what to listen to, Pearl Jam is what I go back to. That was as Don was crying himself to sleep listening to The Cure, I was listening to Pearl Jam, and I mean the first two albums, and then there's heartbreaking stuff, but there's more disenfranchisement and anger and societal woes, and I think in my 20s, early 20s, that's where I was too, and so I think I go back to a period when I was kind of a moron, but I was blissfully a moron. So it's fun to, and their music has changed a ton. They still record. They have a new album coming out, and they've grown up, and so I have with them.
Yeah, I think we tend to go back to like our comfort zones. Yeah. Like I find that, I guess my musical awakening probably occurred right around like 1990. Mm-hmm. So I find, as I'm listing off my favorite albums, they're often, between like the years 1987 and 1992. And I think Dude might be the same way.
Yeah, something like that. And then I also tend to, like, I'll go crazy on an artist if I have time. It's like, hey, I'm going to listen to a Billy Joel record. You know what? I'm going to listen to all the Billy Joel records.
Yeah.
And follow that.
Thank you.
Path. And there were points in my life when songs like Tell Her About It were like, it was like my uncle giving me advice, so I returned to Billy Joel for relationship advice. I mean, at the time he seemed like he was doing pretty well. He had Christy Brinkley,
Well, one of the things you just reminded me of is when I had a crush on like the hottest boy in school, and I remember we had a dance, and we only got a couple of minutes here, so I have to wrap up soon here. But how music can take you back to that time, and I really crushed on Tim Jones. He was dreamy. All the girls loved him. He one time whispered in my ear, and I could still feel that whisper, But we were at the homecoming dance, and Stevie Nicks had just released her solo album. And one of the songs on it was If Anyone Falls in Love. For whatever reason, I just loved that song. And I remember the disco balls going. I'm really aging myself here. And I was looking all around the dark gym for Tim Jones. And every time I hear that song, boom, I'm in the gym, the disco ball's going, and I'm looking for Tim Jones. It just, music has that power to, it encodes or embeds like the, the message. You hear that song and you think of that guy or that girl, and it just brings it all, back to that. To me, that is the incredible usefulness of music when you're having our song. Right? Like if I ever find, that I'm going to get married again, I want to have a song. I want it to be the song that's ours and nobody else's. He can't have used it on any other girls. Hell no. Mm-hmm. No. It has to be special and just us. You cannot recycle love songs. Like you can't. I don't care if it's the most beautiful song ever. Once you've attached that song to that person, it's off your list, right? I don't know why that is. Huh?
I'm sorry. Back in the day, we used to make they weren't playlists; they were mixtapes.
Yes.
Yep. And so, when you were into somebody, you'd make a playlist for them, to kind of so them what you're into, but also to kind of
how you feel about them.
Yeah, kind of subtly seduce them.
Well, right. But I will always love you on there, so you don't have to say it.
Yeah.
So no whoops, there it is, right? You don't have that on your playlist.
Right? But you could recycle that tape. Each time it didn't work, you move on to the next person.
Yeah.
You did not. You recycled the tapes. Oh my God, Don! I can't. And I got
money
this
was
on
tight.
video.
Yeah.
Tapes are hard to come by. Yeah, me and my wife definitely have our songs. One Wilco song that we played at our wedding, and then
Which one? I love Wilco.
It's called Either Way.
I love Either Way.
Yeah, and it was when we first met, there were we sparked immediately. Jerry Sparks, Sparks of Love.
Sparks of Love.
But we immediately, we knew that something was there, but there were complications that needed to be worked through before we could start dating or anything. Yeah. And that song was kind of my, I'm going to hang in there. Either way it goes, as long as she's happy, we'll be all right.
It's got a great line. It's, I will try to understand either way. Yeah, it's a very beautiful song. Oh, I thought you were going to say One Sunday Morning because it's the Jane Smiley song. So I like that you chose Either Way. Yeah. Yeah,
and then other songs as our relationship has developed. We've been married for 15 years, and we'll listen to new records, and a song just hits right for us. Like there's one called The World by Brent Cobb. He's a country artist that you'd probably want to check out. He's toured with Chris Stapleton. Okay. And his cousin is Dave Cobb, who produces Stapleton and Sturgill Simpson and stuff like that. So go check out Brent Cobb. Okay. The album is Shine On Rainy Day. There's Brent, you owe me some money. Yeah. All right, what about you, Don? What's your song?
Well, I keep talking about the same album, but we eloped, so we just we basically got married in our apartment at the time. With my stepdaughter there, we had one other friend because we needed a witness, and so we didn't have like a big ceremony, but I did play the first track from Disintegration, Plain Song. Which is just this really atmospheric song that I just think is beautiful. But yeah, I think probably there's a connection. There's artists that we've discovered together in our time together. That is that become kind of special. The artist Keane, the British band, Somewhere Only We Know. The things like that. I think that's kind of our group.
Yeah, I think they used them in About a Boy. I love that movie About a Boy with Hugh Grant and I forget the other name. For me, I don't want to pick out the song ahead of time. I want to be surprised. But I definitely have such a strong opinion on music. I hope that they choose a song I like, or maybe I get to choose it. I don't know. So we'll see. But I could talk to you guys all day about music and love. This has been so much fun. A great podcast invasion. For everyone, you should check out Album Nerds. I'll let you guys give a plug for how they do. They take 3 albums. There's 3 members, and each week they all submit their album that the other 2 have to review, and then they review it for each of their opinions on it. So you want to give a plug for Album Nerds for a podcast invasion?
Don, I'll let you handle this one.
Yeah, well, you summed it up well. Just 3 dudes, talking about music. But yeah, so you can find us on any of the podcast apps and albumnerds.com. Also, you can find us on social media at Album Nerds.
That's awesome. That's the size of it.
That's awesome. Well, I love it. I love the podcast. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Album Nerds, Don and Dude. Andy, hopefully in the future, if we have another invasion, hopefully you'll join us.
Well, he is a romantic. He is spending the weekend with his wife. It's her birthday, so he has a good
probably
excuse.
Playing her a lot of good music too. So
I'm sure he is.
There's probably rose petals on the.
That's right. Well, thank you all for joining Sparks of Love. This has been a great episode, and I hope you have a great week.